growing up here in Ngārawā here, at Turanga Waiwai marae, our marae was born out of the Spanish flu epidemic post World War One, and so during that epidemic, Te Puia, who created Turanga Waiwai marae, nursed her people at Mercer, and it's the remnants, the orphans, the bereaved of that particular epidemic that she brought with her here to Ngārawā to establish the marae. So we, throughout our lives, the story about our marae is intertwined with the story of that particular epidemic. So we knew as a community the devastation that an epidemic can cause. So, you know, it's just part of our story. Find a history behind us, the way it was her learnings that underpinned the way that our organisation responded to our community, our response. We started preparing for this back in February. So when we got to when the government announced level 4 lockdown, the biggest thing that we were facing was fear of not knowing what was ahead of us, of lockdown. And so rather than waiting for people to come and ask us for help, our understanding of our community is really, we've been around 30 years. We know where the need is in our community, where people live, and who would be struggling initially. And so Whaanau Ora Commissioning Agency supplied us with hygiene supplies. And so schools who received milk, so Horotiu Primary School, after they had distributed their supplies amongst their families, they gave us their leftovers. And so we were able to just create these initial packs and distribute them to the most vulnerable families, so that what resources they did have, it meant it would go further than it traditionally would. And we continue to do that throughout all of level 4, 3, 2. And then, we did the most vulnerable families. We did all our kaumātuas first. Then we did the families who we knew that would struggle. And then we just kept going through as a community bit by bit, and then went back to the beginning again. And then we made sure that people understood if there were families who had needs that were beyond what we were supplying, then they were welcome to come in and contact us, and we would support them in any way we could. The way none of my team stayed home. We worked throughout the whole period, and so the strength that we got from one another by working together, that was special.
Essentially what happened is we did an ecosystem mapping tool. It showed that 85% of emergency kai services were either not in operation or in limited operation, but the need had increased. So there was a huge gap in terms of ecosystem of emergency kai services in the Hamilton and Waikato region. So essentially what we did is set out to find a way to provide aid to the existing organisations providing care for whānau.
Diversity Counselling New Zealand, it's an organisation. We offer counselling for migrants and former refugees in their cultural setting. Some of the people stayed in a motels and one bedroom with 4 children. It was really, really difficult for them, specifically for this community, their own family at home country. So when something happened, Tanki or anything, they're not able to go. So that's a huge amount of grief. Some people, the relationship difficulties. Some of people came for us for our service. It's violence a bit escalated at that time. Some people, they didn't have that digital equipment at home, so we be flexible, like be able to over the phone or whatever convenient, whatever available for them, we make it happen.
There was some real heightened anxiety and just the uncertainty in the initial stages, and I'm talking about March the 21st, which is when effectively we as an organisation mobilised, required people to come in because it was a Saturday, ascertain and get together levels of information about the number of clients, our access to them, our notices to them, about what direction the organisation was taking. When we started delivering the notices explaining where we would be at level 3 and level 4, they were grateful that we were, I call it keeping in touch and actually touching. So they had a notice that was clear, outlined what was going to be happening for this organisation. And then of course being able to provide assurance that we would not leave them. These are the numbers that you can continue to contact. We will contact you regularly. Especially in our older mamas and papas, there was some real fear about the unknown. And they, for us, are quite a faithful people. So to see them being a little bit emotional, a little bit tearful, initially to begin with, was really hard to take. I think first and foremost, it became apparent to me that the amazing sacrifice of these 4 people. Absolutely moved me to tears in the second week when I looked at their absolute passion, commitment, and just willingness to serve. And I was actually reading a devotion. I can tell you that, well, it will be in my journal, but I can tell you the day I read the devotion, and it came from Matthew chapter 20, verse 28, and it says, Jesus did not come to be served, but to serve. And I saw these 4 women epitomise everything that this organisation believes in, and do it so tangibly in such a practical way.
Because many of the families that we work with were already living from week to week, and so when there's any slight variation in income, it does have a big impact on the family. We're confronted with issues around food security, access to telephone credit, access to the internet for education for children, access to devices for ongoing education for children, access to transport, and the ability to maintain your utilities like electricity and gas were things that we were regularly in communication with our families about. We had families who had been made redundant, but a challenge for families was actually asking for help. And we had people, ask for help who had never had to ask for help before and were shocked that to find themselves in this situation. And so, particularly for that group, I think asking for help would have taken an incredible amount of courage.
Collaboration, seriously. We worked with groups people that we mightn't have, relationships grew positively throughout this. We worked with people, we're forced to, there's only a limited amount of resource. So we had to be smart about the way that we respond. And post-COVID, those relationships have stayed intact. And there's new opportunities ahead of us, new ways of working together.
WI's worked in collaboration with other community organisations to come up with the ecosystem mapping. We also did a lot of the strategy work and the planning in conjunction with Hamilton City Council for the Claudeland space. And we did a lot of the reporting and future thinking for the Claudelands Kai project in conjunction with other groups.
It's a holistic way. So we offer mental health services. So somebody offer blanket and heater and somebody offer the finance support. So we would like to work closely in order to support the people.
Without doubt, we could not have done it alone. And so the keys were really relationships and partnerships. Half of my team were working from home because of their own vulnerabilities, age being one of them. And then we had a core group of younger team members who were out in the community putting together the packages and delivering them to people's homes. But we're only a small team. We delivered over 1,300 packages, and we wouldn't have been able to do that without the support of good suppliers like Gilmore's, Fresh Choice in Te Awamutu and New World in Rotatuna. The other people that we wouldn't have been able to do this without were volunteers from Ultra Fast Fibre, CivTech, Corrections and New Zealand Police. Absolutely critical to the success of what we did was contributions from other people. So it's as much their privilege to contribute and do something practical for our families as it was ours.
It was really apparent earlier on that although we had a Pacific focus, our community is such that we've always collectivised, in various initiative projects, spaces. So we were able to, I guess, mobilise what we call a community collective here, which is made up of 4 key stakeholders: Takara Council of Social Services, Raukaua Charitable Trust, and the South Waikato YMCA. And we embedded a mandate or a mantra about how we would be able to work collectively.
So work as a team, so there is a team spirit. Look after yourself first. You need to have that compassion for yourself in order to take care of others.
Was the leadership shown by our King. He offered up a saying just as COVID started to become widespread in terms of the fear that was starting to emerge from our people. And he offered up a saying, amohia ke te ora o te iwi, ka puta ki te whaiau. So, and what he was saying was, if we all focus on the well-being of the people, we will come out of this crisis together, and intact.
An expression, Tangata Pasifika, united we achieve. And I think, from our perspective, we try to put the family at the centre of everything that we do, and try to respond to their needs as opposed to what might suit us. So one reflection that we had back from someone in the sector was, dropping care packages off at people's homes is a way more dignified way to help people than having them line up outside a space to collect food. So for us it's putting the family in the centre of it, maintaining the dignity of the individual, and making sure that our egos don't get in the way of achieving a good outcome for the people that we work with.
We need to be at the forefront of developing and designing what best fits for this community in the event of another emergency. We need to call people to account and ensure that they have better planning around events of this nature going forward. We want to see us as an organisation continue to raise its profile and provide that Pacific leadership in this community, but doing so in such a way that we've become much more inclusive and have grown in its capacity to deliver services to a wider reach of people.
I think there's really obvious needs. So obviously employment is going to be there. There's going to need additional CAI services, like the CAI services that we're talking to at the moment are working at about threefold, and that's not going away. Exacerbated. In terms of the curve, we've got the heroic acts and the shinies. There's going to be a drop. And so how do we work together as a community to start to forefront some of those things that could be coming up? How can we work together, keep collaborations? How can we think ahead to prepare to mitigate some of the risk that we're going to be facing in the next year?
Going forward, that the authorities will see that we do care. Our whānau do take their health seriously. What they're looking for is a response that meets their needs in the way that they want it delivered. Some of our systems need to be disrupted and changed. And the way that we responded are relevant for normal times, for when we're not sitting in a crisis. Yeah, it's all about the power of communities to lead their own change. And so we have to recognise that the capability in others and look outside of where we've traditionally looked for solutions dealing with. In the future, I think the key learning is that, and the message to our leaders at whatever level, in whatever sector you work in, is that when you're in a crisis that impacts on community, that everybody needs to be at the table making the decisions. And if this crisis is happening in Aotearoa, New Zealand, then Māori need to be at the forefront, not just sitting at the table, but now we need to be allowed to lead and be entrusted to lead. And that you can't deal with any crisis in any community in Aotearoa without Māori sitting right there at the forefront.
Last of all, I don't want to take up your time as I know there's kai he whānau, but I'd like to leave you with my favourite whakatauki. Koi te mata punenga, mai angi te mata puihui. Imagine the invisible, explore the potential, and defy the impossible. Kia ora.